Hi, I'm Sam and I just graduated from Imperial I London with a first class degree in biological sciences. How I managed to go first was I read one book, this book called How to Win at College by Cal Newport. I read it and I did everything it said. To save you reading it though, I've taken the tips that I felt made the biggest difference to my degree. I've grouped these tips into 3 categories. The first are things I did every single day. The second group are things I was doing for coursework. And the final group of tips are things I was doing for revision and exams. The first thing I do every single day when I wake up was start organising my days. I tended to schedule my days from the moment I wake up to the moment I went to bed. What I'd do is I'd first of all put in all of my meals, so breakfast, lunch and dinner, and then I would put in all of my daily commitments, so things like going to lectures, labs, if I had any meetings, if I was recording something somewhere, I'd put that into my calendar, which I did on my phone, just because it was a really useful thing to be able to have as the day went on. And then I could work out how much free time I had to fill with work and daily revision. It would be very easy to fill all of this time with just one session that says work. What I did was to split your work into 50-minute sessions. So you have 50 minutes on, 10 minutes off, 50 minutes on, 10 minutes off. So I'd schedule all of those in, and I found it really useful to be incredibly specific as to what I was going to be doing. The final thing on the topic of scheduling is that you need to find an escape. It means that you know you've got something to look forward to at the end of the day. So you've scheduled in your day, you know exactly what you're going to be doing. One really important thing to point out is that all of that work you've scheduled in, don't do any of it in your bedroom. It's really important that you separate where you work from where you go to sleep. So for me, that was the Anning rooms in the Natural History Museum. Whenever I was going to go and study, I would leave my bedroom and I would go over there because it was really quiet. Cal Newport refers to like secret study spaces, and this was my secret study space. So once I'd scheduled my day and I'd gone and had breakfast, the next thing to do would be to prepare for the lectures and labs I had during that day, and that was to do preparatory reading. This is really important because it meant that when I got into the lecture, I wouldn't get lost, that I could spend the time listening and synthesizing what the lecturer was saying and thinking about any questions I might be able to ask them to potentially expand on what they've been saying. Another benefit of making sure that you're always present and that you're always asking questions is that you'll begin to get closer to your lecturers. Cal Newport mentions this thing about befriending a lecturer in order to have a mentor. There are times, no matter how good you are at your course, that you will potentially need to be able to go and ask a question about a piece of coursework or about a topic that you're not understanding. And if you're not comfortable enough to do that, then you're really going to be hindering your progress. But it also made it really easy when I realised how interested I was in developmental biology to go to a bunch of my developmental biology professors and start asking them about the papers I was reading outside of class. It helped me get even more enthused in the topic, and now I'm going to go and do a master's on it. Aside from befriending professors, Cal makes a really important point about who you need to be befriending and surrounding yourself with. He says that you need to surround yourself with phenomenal achievers. There's an old adage that makes a point about you being the sum of the 5 people you're closest to. Now, this isn't saying that you should stop being friends with everyone you're friends with, but he's just making a point that perhaps you should try to spend more time around people who are achieving amazing things. 1, because it's generally awesome to be around really passionate people, and 2, because you might be able to pick up something from them and learn something from them. People who are achieving amazing things tend to care about what they're learning about, and hopefully by being surrounded by them, that passion can rub off a little bit on you. My general rule of thumb was to start fast and end slow with my coursework. Obviously in some situations when you have a 4-week project on, you can't necessarily do that, but I'd make sure when I was working on a 4-week project with a big write-up at the end that I was writing consistently throughout the process of that coursework. Whether that was making the notes at the end of the day after I'd been in the lab that I'd potentially include in my write-up later on, or just doing a little bit of outside reading. When it came to essays on the other hand, I used the 3-day technique. So what I'd do is I'd spend the first part of the first day planning what I was going to write. I'd then write a first draft in one sitting. The second day you print your essay, you go through and you make corrections to it, whether that's grammar, syntax, or you having any extra ideas. Then implement those changes, and on the third day you do exactly the same thing. You go through again looking for any issues and mistakes, correct them, you're ready to hand in. The dissertation, it can be more difficult if you're writing 10 or 15,000 words. At that point, try to split it into manageable chunks. Say that you're going to write your methods on one day, your results on the next, and your conclusions on the third day. But with general essays, 3-day rule. I found that this multi-stage correction process meant that I was handing in really, really good essays. Another alternative that you can use is that if you have a close friend, you can send your essay to them for them to have a look through once you've already corrected it once or twice. Generally, I'd recommend not giving your essay to someone on your course, purely on the basis that you want them to be correcting the flow of your writing and your syntax. You should be the one correcting the intellectual academic content of your work. So that's how I'd write my essays, but a really important thing to do before you even consider writing your essays is to learn to write. And that might sound kind of stupid, we all learn to write when we're in primary school, but what I mean is learning to write really, really well. The best way to do that is to read other academic content, whether that's been published in a journal, it's a book, or it's someone else's essay. It's really important to learn how other people convey ideas and how they convey those ideas really, really well. Eventually, you'll develop your own unique style from all of these sources, but it's useful to get inspiration. It's no different to honing any other craft. Now, finally, in this section, you should never pull an all-nighter, because you're never going to achieve your best when you're running on empty. Your brain function decreases by an astronomical amount, even if you just lose a couple of hours sleep in one night. So now we're on the final section of these tips, and that's about revising for your exams. The first thing to do is to build an effective study system, and this means planning out your revision. I don't mean spend a day planning your revision. All you need is an Excel spreadsheet with rows for every single date you've got between now and your exam, and columns for every session you're going to do on each day. 2 months later, editing update. I like to also put in an extra column besides the column saying what I'm going to be doing in a session, and I update that at the end of the session saying how well I've done. It helps me keep track of what I've been doing. Awesome. Back to the video. I try to get in at least 8 sessions of 50 minutes every single day, and I generally start the moment I get up in the morning, so I could do 2 sessions before breakfast, 3 sessions before lunch, and 3 sessions after lunch, at which point in time I could be done revising by 4 p.m, or put in a couple more sessions, take myself up to dinner, and then have the evening off. It's really important to make sure that you're well rested and that you can relax during exam period when you're revising, because if you're stressed constantly, you're not going to be learning as well. Once again, as I said with generally studying, it's important that within each of those study sessions, you're specifying the exact thing you're going to be working on. The next thing to do is to revise in a sensible way. There are some people who like to copy text out of a textbook. That's an ineffective way to study. The best way to study is quiz and recall, and there are loads of ways you can do this. You can use flashcards, you can answer essay questions, but my preferred tactic is to teach. I mentioned this in one of my previous videos. I got some really cheap white static paper I could stick up to my wall. I got some board pens, and I would teach lectures. I'd pick a specific topic from one of my lectures, imagine that I had a class in front of me, and teach through it from memory. After I'd done that, I could see the topics that I'd taught because I'd written a bit about them on the whiteboard, and the ones I'd missed, and then I could go and do a little bit of revision and try again later. I did this for every single topic in every single one of my modules in my 3rd year, and by the end of the revision period, I could deliver a lecture on every single one of the lectures I'd had in every single one of those modules. And then finally, what I think is the most important of these exam revision tips, make sure that you stop revising an hour before you walk into the exam hall. The very simple reason for this is that you want to be calm when you get around to opening the exam paper. You can process what's in front of you and remember all of your revision. And I guess one last overarching tip is to not be afraid of giving up. Sometimes everything can get a bit much. You might not understand coursework, you might be struggling with lectures. At that point in time, go to a lecturer, go to one of your phenomenal achiever friends and ask them about it. Don't have any shame, but ask them candidly for a little bit of advice or a little bit of help. And the simple act of realizing that you're in over your head gives you the opportunity to correct that and make things okay again. I hope that you will find this video at least somewhat helpful. It's going to be quite long at this point in time, but there's loads of tips, but there's still loads more in here if you want to read them. I'd really recommend it. Otherwise, if any of you are struggling with any element of school or your degree, feel free to leave a comment down below if you need some advice. I hope you have a lovely few weeks, and I'll see you all, I guess, in my next video, whenever that is. Ta-ra!